Hello and welcome to Comic Book Herald's Creannotators. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. Today, I am very excited to be joined by the author of many of my favorite comics. He has two entries inside my top 100 favorite comics of all time. He's the writer of Undiscovered Country, American Vampire, Batman, and now with Best Jackett Press, available initially exclusively through Comixology Originals. We have the likes of We Have Demons, Noctera, Clear, Night of the Ghoul, and not available yet, but a whole bunch of books coming, like Barnstormers, Dudley Datsun, and the Forever Machine. Some exciting stuff. It's Scott Snyder. Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited to talk because we're recording this in the window where pre-orders are open for the first print issue of We Have Demons. You have three issues out with your longtime collaborator on Batman, Greg Capullo. You have inks by Jonathan Glapion, Dave McCaig, letters by Tom Napolitano. Just for people who don't know about the story, We Have Demons, right? It's a war between angels and demons. It's a story of a young woman's complicated relationship with her father. It stars an amazing good demon that looks a ton like Greg, from
hmm
what I've seen in interviews, which I found very funny, that he like has kind of the self insert there. Um,
Which
and
is
and you're going
nice, but yeah, which
to
he
right.
vehemently denies looks anything like him, while it's like his twin.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So this is available through Comixology Originals right now, to this point digitally, but it's coming to print. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of what the strategy is there for you in terms of sort of breaking barriers between digital exclusive and print, and then also like what are you doing with Best Jacket Press to make sure that the print releases stand out and are different from what people get digitally.
That's great, man. That's like the honestly right at the core of the whole project. So, I'm happy to talk about it. The idea with sort of the whole kind of comprehensive deal we did with both Comixology and Dark Horse with Best Jacket was it happened like right around the time when the pandemic was beginning, and I had different plans for different books based on what the creators wanted to do. A couple of them we had talked about possibly kickstarting, um, special editions to fund the rest of the books, like we had done with Noctera. A couple of them we talked about doing digital first. A couple we were just going to do as trade, and they were kind of all over the place. And when the pandemic hit, everything obviously contracted tremendously. And what happened was all of us sort of, I gave everybody a choice where I was like, look, I understand everybody here has offers from Marvel, DC, Boom, other places that are licensed work to write and draw, other books that are with more security. If you stay over here with me, the goal would be, and we keep working on these books, which I want to do, and I have those offers too. Right away, Marie at DC was like, "Do you want to come back?" And Marvel was very kind about extending a hand, and I love those places. But I had been planning for 10 years on kind of taking time to make my own stuff when I was done with death metal and about a decade of licensed stuff. And so I said to them, every creator from Greg, Francis, Francesco, Lisa, I mean Tula Lotte, down the line to Rafa, what do you guys want to do? And fantastically, all of them said they wanted to stay. And I think the pandemic made everybody involved also really reevaluate what they wanted on the other side of this thing. So then the priority became, well, how do we do this in a way that's going to give them a good rate, make sure that they have security during these difficult times, but on top of that, do it in a way that we think will help the comic industry in the long run, like in a way that isn't just kind of take the money and run sort of a thing, and that doesn't burden fans. So ultimately, what I started to realize was that like having all these books come out the way we had planned, which was almost every month one book in the market, whether it was digital or print, for the same amount of money for $4.99, $3.99 each, was a lot to ask of customers at a time when things were really rough, and maybe was short sighted and selfish in general to kind of be like, here's everything, you have to pay all this money. And my buddy Will Dennis, who was editing all the books, was like, I heard Comixology is penning a deal with Dark Horse. It wasn't finalized yet, about having a digital and print bridge. And so I was like, let me talk to them. And so when I spoke to Chip at Comixology, who's like a deep comic guy. I mean, he worked at comic companies, worked at comic stores. They fund artist alleys all over the place. They're real comic folk at Comixology, at least. I was
This
like,
is Chip Mosher, Chip
yeah,
Mosher?
exactly. He was like, yeah, the whole goal is to show the ways in which we can work together and we're not competitive. And that got me really excited. So the idea was to do something that would kind of that would promote subscription to Comixology Unlimited, where when I use it all the time, and I know that there have been some frustrations with the update now with the merging of Amazon. All I can say is that I know from talking to Chip and the people at Comixology itself how much they care about their customer base and their fans and how like committed they are to fixing those things. So yeah, I would just say like believe me, they're not people that are like, well, the reading experience isn't perfect and people can figure it out. They're all about giving you they want to be the place that you go for comics, and they
Right.
love everyone there is a serious like lifelong comic person. So anyway, but the idea was to give people an option to subscribe for the price of like one comic a month, and then be able to read all of these cool books that we're making, all 8 as they come out, for that low price, and to give them an incredible offer in that regard. But then say, what, the way that we would help retailers is that people would get excited about the books by borrowing them digitally, and then we'd have them come out in print in formats that help the direct market on the books that worked in the direct market the right way, single issues, and other ones that would work better as trade, we do them as trade. So the whole idea was to say, how do we do something that will help the comic industry sort of recognize or lean into the synergy and the synthesis between digital and print. My kids, and if anyone's like, if we do this video, I'm in my 10-year-old's room because my studio out across the lawn, I haven't used it during the break that they're on because it's cold and
And I don't have the giraffe, but otherwise the 10-year-old's room looks a lot like mine with
right.
the
Yes,
background you showed me,
big
the
stuff
shelf, yeah.
draft. But he's also like insanely like into Marvel stuff. So he's got Logan, and he's got all these like Marvel things over there. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
seen these comics, but he's got Visible Ultron. It looks a lot like my room too, I guess. But it's also like anyway. The point is, my kids generally consume entertainment that way, whether it's anime or manga or it's books. I mean, they listen on Audible, they read digitally, and those are all subscription, based services. And what they do is the stuff that they love, they go and they collect at their comic store, at their bookstore. So a lot of this, the box sets, they have things that are special editions and that. And I genuinely believe that some version of that is a big part of the future of comics. I think that it doesn't mean that we're not going to have an even stronger direct market. I just think that forcing the direct market. Sorry if this is too like businessy for people.
No, this is good. This is what I'm getting at, yeah.
I really believe this, like on my kids, like on my love for my kids. That when I was at DC, there was a real feeling for a long time that digital had to be like kept at bay,
Mm,
but sort of also humored, and sort of it was always this compromise where it was like, digital has to be the same exact content as print,
mm.
the same price, and the same day and date release, because otherwise it's gonna take over print. The problem with that model is that you're forcing them into a competitive position. And a lot of people who don't have stores or who just prefer the convenience of reading digitally will read digitally at the expense of print if you make it the same price and you make it, you put them as diametrically opposed. If you say, hey, guess what? For the price of one comic, you can browse thousands and thousands of comics that are Marvel, DC, Image, which you can on Comixology Unlimited because they have like 40,000 titles there, from like The Dark Knight Returns to Year One to Saga to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You fall in love with the medium. You browse it at your leisure, the way you do when you have subscription to Netflix or any of that stuff. You decide what you want to go buy, the merchandise, of those shows, like for things like Netflix or the box sets for your whatever. Here with comics, you go buy the comics. You buy, especially if the print has something new.
Mhm.
That was the idea here. It was to allow you to kind of buy things or browse all of our books. And to be totally honest, like I'd probably make more money in the long run telling you to buy each one single issue. But I believe in what we're doing with the idea of doing it subscription based. So,
It's a better value doing the $5.99 subscription, right? And reading all of
oh,
them rather than buying single issue by far, yeah.
yeah, like so you're paying for one issue a month, but right now you could literally pay 5.99 and read Demons. We have Demons 1, 2, 3, Clear 1, 2, 3, 4, Ghoul 1, 2, 3, 4, and a few months from now you'll have those three series all finish their first arcs, and you also have Barnstormers and Canary, and all of that's for the price for 5.99 once. Like you could read all of that for 5.99. So my goal is to be able to say to you, come take advantage of us, read all those books for that. And then when it comes to print, these books are all coming out from Dark Horse in different formats. So we have Demons, the initial orders are high enough that it supports the idea that we'll probably do single issues with more of them, with Clear and
Mm,
with Night of the Ghoul. And those are also direct market friendly books. Some of the other ones like Barnstormers, which is more experimental, but one of my favorite things I've ever done. It's less of a direct market book in the way that it's structured. It might be more of like a 3-part kind of book. I mean, it's told in 3 parts, but it's like the parts would be bigger than any single issue. So, like for example, when we get there, we see what people want. We'll do kind of a poll, and if people want a trade as opposed to that, and retailers especially want a trade as opposed to that, or if they want the 3 issues and think that they'll do well in their stores, we'll do that. So the fun of it is being able to create things like that actually work in their spaces to support the other space too. So
right.
right now, like with We Have Demons, for example, we're not releasing it as the same content that came out digitally. It has all this extra stuff. It's got the whole script. It's got all the designs. There are a bunch of amazing variant covers also. So we have variant covers by everybody that's involved in Best Jacket and doing a book with us. So we have Tony Daniel, a cover obviously by Greg Capullo, and then another cover by Greg coming later. We have just today, we're announcing a special Peach Momoko cover that is going to be signed by me and Greg. And you get it if you order 50 issues for your store, you get one of them and they're signed. So it's a special deal we're doing. We're going to sign tons of these issues. Um, you have a Tony Daniel cover, a Francis Manipal cover, a Francesco Francavilla cover. You have Midtown Comics doing a special variant. You have, and I'm going to go to sign for the release of it. I'm signing their stock. They have Tula Lotte cover, Jamal Eigel cover, Dan Panosian cover, Jock cover, and a Raphael Albuquerque cover. So you've got like,
If it wasn't clear, you have a ridiculously awesome, gallery of artists working with you on Best
I
Book Day.
know, I know, I'm a murderer's row.
Yeah,
So the whole idea though is that's the kind of stuff that to me is the the way the way that we can kind of help digital and print work together. So the digital is really it comes out 6 months earlier. You have all this time to read it. It's cheap, it's immersive, it's fun, and then when you want to buy it, if you're a print waiter or if you're somebody that loved it, you can get the print. And the print is beautiful. I mean, each issue is 40 plus pages. It's a gorgeous book. Dark Horse does a great job with that. And you have all these variant covers to support retailers, to support fans that want like speculating, all that stuff. So, that's why I did the whole thing at Best Jacket this way was, and to be super clear too, like I went to every creator and said, do you want to do this? If you don't, we can peel the book off and do it however you want. We can do it at Image, we can do it at Dark Horse proper, we can do it Panel Syndicate, like whatever it is you want to do, I'm happy to
yeah,
do. So, but everybody liked the idea, so we did it this way, and yeah, it's been working out great. I mean, they pay a great rate to the artists, and
mhm.
we own all the ancillary rights, so that we're able to go out with it for TV and film and all that stuff ourselves, and they have no claim over it. And it's been the best year plus of my life, like working on it creatively, because don't get me wrong, like I love working on Batman and on Metal and that stuff. There's no greater joy. But this, except for being able to make your own stuff with your friends and have no creative limitations and none of the grind or the pressure the same way. So, I love it. I mean, I still talk to everybody at DC. I just talked to Marie and Andrew this week, and talking to Marie again next week, and I love them, and I'd love to come back sometime. But
Yeah.
being able to do this way is really like, it is a dream come true, being able to do well, doing your stuff your way with your friends in a way that you believe in is
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I mean, it's definitely, I think, one of the most interesting things about what you're doing with Best Jacket. I think the wave of Substack creators, obviously, which you're involved in, there's kind of this moment right now of creator empowerment, of being able to create your own stories that you want to get paid a reasonable, if not good rate to do so. And then retaining the rights is obviously such a big thing, that obviously you don't get with that licensed material, which definitely has been interesting. There's this similar moment in NBA. I don't know if you're a basketball fan, but they call it like the player empowerment era, where it's like players are taking ownership and leverage in terms of where they play, who they play with. Again, it's just kind of that thing of like, yeah, the power, the rights coming to the creators or the players or the actionable, individuals in this. You're literally making your own publishing house, essentially, right? Your own
Yeah.
imprint. What do you think it is about this moment? Is so much of it the pandemic? Was it kind of just like it's in the water? Because it's not just you, right? You got James Tynion, who I know you're close with. You got Jonathan Hickman over at Substack. There's a lot of creators doing this. What do you think it is about right now that kind of is making this change in comics?
That's a great question too. I think the pandemic sort of exacerbated what was already happening by a lot. Like, it was a tremendous catalyst. But I think a lot of us are feeling the same things people are feeling across the media industry. Like, I'm lucky enough right now to be able to. I've been working on the potential Witches TV show, and yeah, so we'll know in a couple months if it gets greenlit. I'm really excited.
Cool.
Yeah, but in that sphere and in comics, and I have a lot of friends in books, it's really similar, where what's happening is these companies are gobbled up by bigger companies and bigger companies, the Marvel and DC and places that you work for licensed work. And it becomes less and less secure. When I started at DC, it was just DC, and then it was bought by Warner Brothers like my first year in, and then Warner Brothers was bought by AT&T, and then they sold it recently to Discovery. And so it's like you're riding on the backs of these megalodons in the ocean, and you don't know what they're going to do. And you know it doesn't mean that there isn't wonderful opportunity and security in working for things like Star Wars or Disney. I mean, working for Disney, working for, but there's also a tremendous amount of volatility that wasn't there before, and for example, you see it like in television. Here's the way it has been, according to the people that I've met in the writers' room. Because I'm not leaving comics for TV at all. Like, I just lucked out in terms of this one job.
Okay.
I was only supposed to consult for 2 weeks, and then I wound up becoming the showrunner of the room, which has been amazing.
That's
But
awesome. Yeah.
I know, but that's why I'm like literally like, like look like a bum, because it's been like two jobs. But
Sounds busy. Yeah.
it is, but it's the best kind of work. You're working on your own stuff with people that you really like. But like, talking to writers, like, the climate right now in TV is there's all of this work that wasn't there before because of streaming. So there's more shows happening right and left. But the shows are shorter run, they're 6 to 10 episodes, and they're less definite in terms of their consistency. They might be one season and then never come back, or they
Yeah.
might not get picked up, or there's much more churn and uncertainty in that world. And that's similar, I think, to every market. Like, to comics, there might not there's a bigger demand for IP. So companies like Boom, intellectual property, so Boom, Vault, everyone is kind of, if not growing, then sort of figuring out ways of putting out significant amounts of content.
Right.
IDW with their new originals program, Comixology, everybody wants content. But the issue is working for, on licensed stuff like GI Joe, or like those. They have more and more owners, and it becomes more and more difficult to have any kind of long term plans. That's what it was. Like, when I was there, I was really lucky. I walked in and they gave me, a year commitment on Detective Comics, a year commitment on Batman. And they don't do that. Like there's no, I mean, I know now, like, I mean, they're not allowed to. It's not that Marie wouldn't. They don't really give like a year commitment. They
Okay.
so you could do 6 issues, and if it's not working, you could go. The other problem, similarly, like they're more interests, so like they might have more directives because they're owned by companies now that have other plans for those characters. So for
Hmm.
example, if Marvel is doing a Spider-Man movie, then you might have a lot of directives on Spider-Man, and because Disney didn't own Marvel when he started, it was freer. Similarly, at DC, there's a lot of things that they want you to do to promote certain characters in certain ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's more and more these days. I think it's more and more difficult to have long-term creative freedom on licensed stuff. It doesn't mean that people don't do it, and there are fantastic editors that carve out those spaces because you see it right and left. I think what a lot of my friends in licensed work right now are able to do, Donnie and Ryan at Marvel and Dan Slott, and over at DC, you see, Tom Taylor and just killing it with Bruno on Nightwing, and Josh Williamson on Batman. I mean, there is a level of sort of they're carving out spaces for people to do things, but the general atmosphere, if you talk to people, is that there's just less oxygen to be able to make big overarching long-term plans without a lot of consultation. So I think there's that like happening, and then I think the pandemic really like ratcheted everything up, where it made us all be like, Jesus, like the comic industry is really, really fragile in a lot of ways, and there are things
Yeah.
that problems with it systemically, like for me, like the digital and print competition. So it was like, how do we do things that are exciting for us without feeling like we're going back to the grind on the other side of this thing? But also, how do we try and strengthen the comic industry or do things that we believe are healthy for it, and point a way, at least one of many ways forward that we believe in? So I think a lot of people had those priorities, and I think the demand, or the thing, like Substack making comics, Tapas, like all these places wanting comics all of a sudden, or approaching comics with corporate money, um, is because the streaming wars, because there's so much more room to make shows. Like when I was growing up, and I'm sure it's the same for people, a lot of people listening to this of a certain age, you had like your few kind of gold star shows that were like Thursday night from 8 to 10,
Hmm.
whatever. And a lot of the daytime programming was whatever. It was like, game shows and yada yada, and soap operas and whatever. But
Yeah.
this cable recedes more and more and more, and more people use streaming services. They're not looking for filler content. All they want is a show to binge, another show to binge, another show to binge, another show to binge. And the quality has gone up a tremendous amount in terms of television and movies, in that regard. But the problem is, um, the good thing is, I guess, for us, that creates huge demand for more and more intellectual property, more and more Walking Deads and
Hmm.
Sweet Tooths and Why the Last Man's and all that stuff. So all these companies, right and left, are more eager to do indie work with you. So there's more opportunity, but it depends on what you want. A lot of companies take half your rights, or take all your rights, or take the rights and revert them to you. So it's really like the Wild West right now is the best way I can describe it to people. And there's all these companies like Substack and places coming offering good paydays for you to make content. And sometimes they don't want to put claims on the content. That's the best thing with like Comixology and them, whatever, you own your content.
Yeah.
But the benefit for them is like you're making the stuff there. So people come there to see it. People understand you're doing it there first. They get the first bite of the apple by coming to this platform first. So yeah, so I think that's, to give you the longest answer in history. That's kind of like, that's sort of the like a more prismatic look at it from, why I think so many creators are both kind of deciding to do this, and why there's more opportunity to do it than there was before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I mean, just from like a fan perspective, I think one thing, the longer you read comics and you study the medium and the history and all that, you realize like it's a good thing if creators have more rights. Like comics historically has not empowered creators in the appropriate ways. So I mean, these types of movements, I think, whether it's Comixology originals, whether it's Substack, whatever, like purely on the basis of getting creators paid and allowing them to retain the rights to their work, like that's huge. That's a huge win historically for the medium. So it's exciting to see, and I think what's been cool about Best Jackett Press and the stuff you're doing is again that figuring out the synergy between digital and print, right? Waking up to the reality of this moment, which is, as you've elucidated here, like they are not competition, right? Like comics readers come in and they want to engage with the medium in different ways, and these things do not need to be at war with each other. I want to go back to you mentioned you're working on the Witches TV show. Is that so? You're show running. You're writing. You know, you're the head writer and working on this thing. Does that? I saw Noctera's in production with Netflix. Is this a Netflix thing? Is it TBD with the home? What's
No, it's I'm not. I'm technically it's like it's another big place, but I'm not allowed to say it yet.
okay?
They like to wait until it gets greenlit to talk about. So hopefully in the next couple months we'll know if it's we'll definitely know. But I mean, hopefully it will get greenlit, and then we'll be able to make a whole big celebration about it and that stuff. I love the what we've done so far. But yeah, those are there. Undiscovered countries at New Republic, which
Hmm.
we just handed in the yesterday, our rewrite of the draft. So I'm really relieved and excited
Are
about
you
that.
in? Are you and Charles writing like the TV pitch
We
for
did,
that
it's a
essentially?
movie. Yeah, we did.
The movie.
We wrote the screenplay together, which was a blast. Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing that I encourage people to keep in mind is like if you're a creator, it's great to work licensed stuff. I mean, it's security in a lot of ways. Not like I was saying, the larger aspects of security aren't as strong as they used to be. But if you're working at DC and Marvel, it is like a paycheck you're going to get, and and you get to work on these characters that are just your dream characters. So but I love that job, so I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying I want to make people aware that are creators of how how much more how many more options there are these days than there were before about making your stuff and owning your stuff, at least partially, at a moment when so many places want your stuff.
Mm.
And the way it works with an option is that if your work is option, it's usually like a 3-year option, something like that, 18 months with like, the option to automatically re-up it if they want. But whatever money, it's not like you're making millions of dollars from that, but you're making tens of thousands of dollars from that. And then the benefit is like if you have enough things, like I was talking to Lemire, who's one of my close friends, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when he started to really break off to do more indie stuff. And I was still pretty entrenched at DC,
Yeah.
and happy there. But he was like, this is my goal. My goal is to have 10 or 11 things that I love that I think are my best work out in the world. So that if they're optioned, when that option comes up in 3 years, it comes back to you and you can go back out with it. And
Hmm.
so the idea is that you create almost like a loop of financial stability because with 10 things out in the world that you like I have
Mm.
four right now, 4 out there. And like after death just got the option just got renewed, and it's not tons of money, but it's a nice amount of little bit of money, like, you know, for each of us, like 10, 15, $20,000, which is fantastic. It's a lot of money. And that's one property, going around the loop once. So the idea is, you know what I'm saying? So if you have 10 properties out in the world that are optioned or getting optioned, rhythmically because they're strong or getting made. I mean, if they get made, you make 10 times the option or 8 times the option, that's
Yeah.
when you get a real big payday. But so the goal for a creator like Jeff, and like me now is to have enough things out in the world that you have these streams of income from those things that you love that you made perpetually, or at least
Right.
as long as people are interested in them.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think strategically and business wise. Do you, with that in mind, do you find yourself writing with the option, writing with the pitch in the the TV or movie pickup in the back of your mind more than you used to? Like maybe with American Vampire, I don't know how much of that, how much was that even on your radar versus now with We Have Demons, where you're like, listen, I'm going to make the best comic I want to make. Like, I'm not really questioning the integrity of like the comic, right? But it's more like, but yeah, if HBO wants to pick this up, I'd love that, right? Like, how much more is that on your radar?
It's not really more on my, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, like from my first things to now, I've always been a high concept guy, when it comes to the way that I did Batman and the way that I do my own stuff. Like American Vampire, the reason that it was attractive to DC was, even back then, was because of the IP. Like, so that they were like, we can make this a show. And it was at the moment when they were picked up by Warner Brothers, that they were thinking that. I've never been I've never been a writer who I think, like, there are other people who I love, like for a long time, Tynan, for example, was a perfect example of one who just tended to write much longer, less vaulted arc, kind of immersive series like The Woods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And his runs on Red Hood and the stuff that he started, like Batman Eternal, less adaptable, more kind of immersive.
Hmm.
DC always criticized me. Dan was always picking on me for doing an arc that began and ended. I mean, when
Hmm.
you look at our run, every arc is named, right? It's Court of Owls, Black Mirror, Death of the Family, Endgame, Super Heavy. You know what I mean? Death Metal,
Yeah,
Last
yeah.
on Earth, like
And pretty confined, right? You can pick up that
combined.
trade, and it's yeah.
And even American Vampire, which is probably the least like that, is extremely like that. It's TV
Hmm.
seasons. It's one. It's every one is a decade.
Hmm.
every
Right.
every arc is a decade. Like, so. I just write that way. Like, it's just always been who I am. I'm pretty Spielbergian and like summer blockbustery. Those are the things I love. I love watching with my kids. Terminator 2, Aliens, like those kinds of movies, like those kinds of books. Those are the things that have always gotten me going. The sweet spot between personal, literary, like, and experimental and blockbuster. Those are like Dark Knight Returns, like those are the things I love. Like, so I'm not more aware of it. I think I'm more aware of the need to protect it that way. Like,
Mm.
with American Vampire, I would not change my decision going back at all. I'm so happy that it got my career going. But when I signed that deal, like, I signed away the rights forever. Like, I never get those rights back.
Yeah.
But when I, which is like, when I was able to do my last deal with DC for death metal, I was able to get them back, upon,
Oh,
yeah. So they're about to revert, like, now. So can't wait to go out with that one.
yeah.
You know what I
Nice.
mean? Like, so what I'm trying to say is, I've always been aware of that kind of storytelling, but I don't think about it like, how do I make this a movie or TV thing any more than I used to. I really don't. Like, in some of the books coming out, you'll see, are less, like I said, like Barnstormers, Book of Evil. They're not, they're totally adaptable. Like, they're not like, oh, they're not as easily defined elevator pitch type books.
Yeah.
More off the beaten path in creepy, fun ways and in romantic ways. So yeah, it's the whole thing, you know. I mean, like, After Death is probably the least commercial book I ever did. Um, like with Jeff, it was totally intensely personal and intensely, like, uncommercial, in that it was prose and spot illustrations and
Yeah.
3D
Sure.
things. And that got picked up by Sony, like, right when we did it, so it's never been something that I felt the need to think about, just because I tend to write that way, I guess, in general. But even when I haven't written that way, we've been lucky in terms of being able to get things picked up. And at this point in my career, I'm well known enough, that there's more of a demand. So yeah, I think it's almost the opposite, honestly, Dave, is like, I haven't I don't feel the need to keep that in mind, because I feel like I've created enough of a library that people are interested. So I feel a lot more freedom. So even though a lot of these books, like, I think some of the reason, like, you might read We Have Demons and be like, wow, this has a high concept or clear, is because I only get these guys, for one arc at a time, where it's like,
Sure.
this is our dream book. What do you want to do? And it's a book we've been talking about forever and we want to, like, do it. So it has that whole kind of sculpted quality where it's like, This is the book that we've talked about when we've hung out together at cons and when we've visited each other at our houses and that. So every one of those books, just to be clear, none of them are concepts that I pitched to the creators. They're all concepts that we came up with together pretty much. So like with Demons, I went to Greg and I'm like, after we're done with death metal, I'm begging you, we have to do a creator on, please. Like I'm so tired of the grind together because Greg kills himself on these books like all the time.
Yeah.
No matter how much extra time he has, he always like wears himself down, just going over and over and over. And when you have a very high pressure environment like we did on Batman and Metal, where like all these other books depend on it, it's really hard. And then so I was like, I just want to do something with you that we can have fun. You don't feel that pressure. And so we started talking, and he threw a couple ideas, which I want to do one of them really badly next. I threw him a couple ideas, and he loved demons. I was like, it's got a demon with a big sword and like and he's like, I'm in. That's it. And they curse a lot. I was like, and he was like, I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with Francis came and visited me and my family, with his daughter and wife a few years ago. And I was like, what do you want to do together after we're done? And he's like, I want to do something that's like about the world our kids face. So I was
Mm.
like, well, let's talk about it. Like, what's your big fears? And I was like, well, our fears are the fact that one fear is that they just get everything they like sort of thrown back at them all the time, more and more of the same, all the algorithmic kind of, search engines, all of it, everything. It's like, oh, you like that? Here's more of it. And doesn't challenge them. Well, let's create a world, sci-fi world together that's built on that where you can choose whatever you want to see and nothing else. So that's where Clear came from. And, so they're all organic books built from the thing up. None of them are like back pocket things that are like, this would make a good movie. They're all like, you know, you can tell reading them, I hope. Like Francesco and I, that comes from both of us loving classic horror movies and challenging each other during the pandemic and before, like, how would we do a classic horror movie, a new version of a new classic horror monster? How would you make one today? So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that book, Night of the Ghoul with, Francesco Francavilla. That's probably my favorite of the bunch right now.
thanks for it.
I'm such a fan. Yeah, it's such a good book. So going back to kind of then that strategy of so We Have Demons is coming out as a print periodical, right? And there's plans
Mhm.
for a trade this summer. Are the plans for Night of the Ghoul and Clear to do the same? Are you going to kind of play this one by year and see what happens? What's the plan for the rest of these books that are coming out?
Well, we just got the initial numbers on We Have Demons, and they're strong enough that it looks like we probably will be doing more than just trades with the other ones too, which is hugely exciting. So we'll see. It really is a case by case basis. So the best I can say is we'll see. It depends on what the creators like. Literally, the data on the initial orders came in Friday of last week.
Yeah,
So
sure.
we're 3 days into them being like, wow, this went really well. Do you guys want to do it? So I don't want to speak for the creators. I want to go back to them and say, I literally haven't even gone back to them, Francis and Francesco, and been like, guess what? They're thinking about doing this. Do you want to? But my guess is that we will, and that they'll want to, and we'll do the same kind of a thing in some format. So yeah, the whole goal is that they will come out in print. They will come out in Dark Horse, and they will be a different package than what came out digitally.
Yeah, so I'm sure this is going to vary by, the collaborator and your co-creator on these projects. But so with We Have Demons, there's three issues, right? And you just talked about how a big part of the appeal here is, you don't have to be tied to the Batman grind of right of release schedules. Um, Given that, how often do you kind of plan to return? Are you building in 6-month breaks between arcs? Do you have kind of a cadence for that yet with these different projects?
Yeah, we do. So like Francis and Francesco, you have to imagine they need 6 months to like, get ahead again and to kind of clear the plate. So with Greg, the one thing that I promised him after two, and that he, really wants to do is you can see him, he's posting it on social media, but he really for years and years has wanted to finish the Creech, like his series that he did before we started Batman. So he's doing that now. It's three big issues. That's going to take him, 6 months or so to do.
Yeah.
But the priority is to continue to do We Have Demons. And that might mean if it's Creech is taking him longer, doing a special issue where Greg and I write it together with somebody else, doing an arc that Greg helps me with, and then have Greg come back. But we're committed to the series being a place that we can return to the way I do with American Vampire, the way I did with, things like that allow me to come back.
Hmm.
I was going to say Witches, but we haven't been able to come back to Witches because we
Well, yeah, yeah, the one shot, right, or the special.
we did, but the Witches is the one that got away in the way that like both of us are like, we should have not taken such a big break. But
Mm,
um, the reason that we're not doing it right now is because doing the TV show, Jock's on it. Jock's doing the art concepts for it.
good, good, yeah,
So the whole goal is to like finish this, have it, if it's greenlit. I mean, there's no world in which we're not bringing it back right away. I mean, we'll bring it
yeah.
back either way right away, but I mean, you can imagine with that news, like the whole goal would be finally do the arc it's all like planned out. He has the outline for it. So it's like, we just like, it was one of those things where we were really lucky where like we were going to go back to Witches, and then I got the opportunity to do Metal. And I was like, and then he got the opportunity to do Star Wars and be costume concept designer on Last
Right.
Jedi. And he was like, I have to do this and take my kid up to Star Wars land in Scotland. And I was like, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And then we finished, and then they were like, do you want to do the Batman Who Laughs series? And I was like, oh, I so want to do that. That's like the one book that I would still do here before the sequel to Metal. And then I'm like, it's because it's almost a sequel to the Black Mirror. I was like, Jock, what about this? And he's like, it's the only thing I'd put Witches on hold for. So all right, yeah, he did
Yeah.
that. And then he got the opportunity to do Batman while I'm doing this stuff.
Hmm.
And he was like, I've always wanted to do my own Batman story. I'm like, great, go do it. So we have a lot of faith that the fans will still be there for Witches, and we're definitely like, there's no world in which we're not bringing it back soon. But yeah, if we can get this TV show across the hump, then you can bet you're going to see Witches.
Okay, cool, cool. Fingers crossed. Then I think a lot of fans will be pretty excited about another volume there. All right, so looking at kind of, you mentioned, okay, we have Demon Story probably going to continue here down the line. Obviously, it's set up to do that. The experience with Best Jacket is going well. It seems like overall, but like one of the complications, and you brought this up at the front, is so there's these wild changes to Comixology this past week. And this merger with the Amazon storefront, which is not a shock. They were purchased by
Yeah.
Amazon in 2014, but obviously it was a lot, and it was a lot at once
Yeah.
for I think a lot of readers, especially the power users. Um, I guess my question for you is, were you given any heads up that these sort of changes were happening, and kind of what's your reaction, I guess, broadly, just to what's going on with, what is now the digital home of all these good projects you got out there?
Yeah. No, I was definitely not. I mean, I was definitely given heads up that the interface was coming. That was, a little bit before they announced it to everybody else. So I knew it was coming. Um, I I I did not expect it to be such a radical departure from what was there before. And when it happened, it took me a day to almost like catch up and be like, oh wow, this is quite different. And I was still using the old app, so I'm just lazy. It didn't even like occur to me to update it yet
Mm,
until it had to be. And then I was like, oh, okay. And so no, I wasn't aware ahead of time of like how big the changes would be. But the truth of the matter is, like, if you told me how big they were going to be and we had to launch everything even like now, I'd still do it, as
yeah.
long as my creator friends wanted to, because I have a lot of faith in the people at Comixology to fix it.
Mm,
Because again, like, you know, I don't know Amazon, who's the Amazon, like, I don't know Amazon, but I know Comixology, and I know
yeah.
they're I know them all really well, and they're deep, deep comic people, and they're not going to be. I know they're not okay with a reading experience that people aren't happy with. So they're going to work to correct everything. I think one thing, without speaking out of turn, that Chip mentioned at one point was that sometimes the way that Amazon wants to do things is to put something out and then fix it as it goes in that way. And I think that's what they're going to wind up doing here. So
Yeah.
again, like, I know Amazon. I don't know. I can't speak for Amazon. I assume from the people I know there from other projects, that like that they're highly committed to making it really uh, impressive and user friendly. But I know the people at Comixology are, and like I said, like we have two bites of the apple, and I'm really excited to be doing what we're doing for many reasons, but also because I believe in the bridge between digital and print, and I think Comixology is the real the best place to read your comics digitally, in that way too. So yeah. So and the other thing I'd say is like they have this track record of doing stuff with creators that I think are really exciting and progressive, from Mark Bernardin and Ariella Cristantina, who I'm doing something with, to Chris Sabella and Kurt Pines and Pyres, and so there's just a ton of. I think that there are people you can see from what they do that are committed to the comics community and to trying new things and being exciting. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate that it's so that it needs some real work to get back to people's good graces. But I'm really confident that it will, and I'm again like I would sign up to do it again right now and even have the launch right now, even if it really came down to it. But so yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I think probably you're right in the sense of like, I anticipate they will fix this thing over time. I mean, it's like you said, like the one thing I've been saying to people is like, they have a 15-year track record of getting what comic fans want.
Yeah.
This is the exception to the rule, on the Comixology side, right? Like, and it clearly, I think pretty clearly was out in the world before it was ready. And I think that's frustrating to a lot of people. But I do anticipate that over the ensuing months, it will be fixed. I guess, the question is just how long does it take and how many challenges did they create through this merger? But,
I agree. And I think a
yeah,
lot of that is like I'm seeing it too firsthand, like seeing it as it happens. So, but again, like I think what you said is really astute. I mean, they're comic folks before they're Amazon folks in that way, and I think that ultimately I have a lot of faith in them making something that's better than was there before. I know they care about it. So
yeah, yeah. Well, and the big thing that I keep telling people too is like for this project, for this interview, like I just read all your stuff. So it's not like comics are not readable. Through this, you just kind of gotta figure out the changes. And it's, with any technology upheaval, everyone's always mad,
oh,
initially,
sure.
right? Just with changes and having to adapt in general. So there's some of that, and then there's some stuff that is like actually broken. But obviously it's got a road to hoe in terms of getting it right. But yeah, no, but like you're not like, oh, I'm gonna delay the book with Tula because of what's going on or anything like that.
No, no, not at all. And again, like, I believe in the big project of what we're doing, and I believe in Comixology overall in a huge way. This doesn't like ding my faith in them in the least. And I think it's unfortunate and it's a big challenge. I think there are real challenges to meet with this one. And, I'm not minimizing those, but it's that thing where it's like, again, like I know the people internally and I know they're really committed to comics and to making Comixology a place people love to go to read them. So I'm not worried in that regard. And also, like, we're all getting to do the books that we love creatively free for really good rates, and then we own the rights, and then they come out at Dark Horse in an amazing
Yeah,
format for print.
right.
So for me,
It's
like,
not like you're trapped. Yeah, that's nice.
not all of it is like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't lose like a moment's sleep over that, like in the way of I like, on all the creators I'm working with are similar about it. Like
Yeah,
we're all like making great rates doing the things we love, and then we own the rights to the things and they come out in print. So, you know, and we love the way they come out there, like up until this moment when it seems like there's challenges in the reading experience in that way too. So I'm still super proud of the whole thing and excited to be a part. I just, I really hope that they're able to fix the issues and restore people's faith in the digital reading experience there quickly.
yeah, yeah. No, I do expect with some time they'll make some progress. So I did want to ask you just kind of thematically through a lot of your work. So you're working on a number of projects, but there's definitely like a trend of good versus evil, right? Just the ancient
Yeah.
struggle, right? Of just like the biggest possible story, good versus evil, right? And this was super apparent in your Justice League run, right? Doom, the emergence of Doom, and just kind of this like just the darkness of the world. And I've heard you talk in interviews, and it's something certainly I connect with, just in terms of like, yeah, I'm a parent now, and I'm worried about the future for my kids and sort of the darkness of the world. Um, the anxieties of bringing kids into like what this world is, and in particular there's so much about faith and faith in humanity, which I find really interesting. Do you find that channeling that into story helps restore faith for you in whatever capacity that means, or is like how effective is that for you in terms of channeling those particular anxieties with personal faith? It could be spiritual faith, or just with like just faith in humanity.
It is really potent for me to do that. I mean, because writing through, you have to really inhabit the characters, and I feel as though you can see the arc in my storytelling from Batman, which was as dark and horror driven as Batman is more hopeful, to a period, in the last 5 years that's been darker, where I
Hmm.
think from Justice League through uh, Death Metal and Noctera and The Batman Who Laughs, those books all deal in different ways with the idea that our nature is worse than it seems like we thought. And somebody kind of finds that and points to it and says, we're meant to give up on the whole fallacy of goodness in one way or another. And there are different variations on that theme. And I think as a parent now, with what I'm trying to do in this moment, which is different than the last, I think, 5 years in particular, where it felt a lot of the times like our worst instincts were being encouraged, from the loudest voices around, um, is that I'm trying to kind of find a way of communicating to my kids that I have faith in them to do better than us and to find a way forward that they can be hopeful about, and that we're here to support them in that way. And yes, human nature is darker than I thought it was in a lot of ways. Even now, I think, that we're not as far past some of the ugliness of the past that I thought we were in some ways. But that, there's a fortitude and a determination to do that is hope itself. Like, you have to believe that it's not a diagonal line, that it's something that you is a force of will all the time, and uncomfortable. So that, to me, that's like the theme of a lot of the things I'm working on now in different ways, whether they're pessimistic or optimistic. It sort of shifts away from the revelation of the darkness of human nature and the kind of manipulation of that to finding a way through, and finding a way to be hopeful at a moment when there's so many big systemic problems facing us, and
Yeah.
ugliness all around. That that's I write from that place, so I think it's easy, if you look at my stuff, to find themes, and for me, these are my favorite kind of writers, is when I can read Jason Aaron, or Jeff Lemire stuff, or Tom King stuff, and or Marjorie Liu's stuff, and you can find themes across the work in different ways. Kelly Thompson does this too, where it's like I'm reading across and I can see in these years they were concerned with this, and no matter
Mm.
what medium it is, whether it's like superheroes, indie, they're thinking about things that matter to them, and those things are apparent in different ways in their work, because they're
Yeah.
not just writing. Like, that's another thing that I'd say about, like, your question earlier about, do you just do high concept sort of pitch process to get these books going? You can see, like, Demons, Clear, Night of the Ghoul, they're all about things that sort of circle the same fears in ways that are personal to me as a parent. So no, they're built that way. And yeah, that's it is like, you're right. Like, it is a moment when I'm trying to write with a about faith in a different way than I used to.
Yeah, no, I think you can tell that definitely as someone familiar with your work. Is there one of the books coming, one of the series that have yet to release, that for you feels the most different? Like, what's the one that you think people are going to be the most surprised by in terms of it's maybe the most different from the rest of your catalog?
Barnstormers is the most
Yeah.
different. It's like, it's not it's a romance, but it's twist it has like, it's a little twisted. it's dark. So it's because it's about, again, it's like about this, it's about a moment in time I've always loved to write about before I got into comics. That's the 19 teens into the 20s, that exists right after the pandemic, the influenza pandemic, and right after World War I, and is this odd period of quiet and rich people celebrating and working people worried about what's coming right afterwards. And then the depression hits and the world will, like, it's an odd period of quiet, like, anxiety and total hedonism. And I see parallels between that and now, this moment. And so, that book, it's really, again, it's something I've been thinking about a long time, and it's personal, but it also, there's no supernatural elements, and there's no monsters, and there's no horror. It's about a guy who is a barnstormer, and is claiming to be a guy from World War I pilot, even though his past is questionable. And he crashes into a party he thinks is for him, and it's a wedding. And the bride at the wedding, the next morning, shows up at his plane with a gun and is like, "You're taking me with you wherever you go." And that's the beginning of the book.
Okay.
So it's like a different kind of book altogether. It's got a Bonnie and Clyde feel. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, it's, the art is like, Tula's art is out of control. It's like nothing you've seen from me. But all the books it kind of goes like this. Like, the first three books are kind of books that are definitely a little off the beaten path for me, in the way that, like, Greg and I have never done a creator owned. It's a little bit more character. It's a little bit, there's less horror and action in the first thing than I think you might like. It's very character driven. Then the Francis one, I've never worked in sci-fi, horror with Francesco doing classic horror is new for us in that way. And the whole structure is a little experimental with, it goes back and forth between the fragments of a black and white movie and the present.
And I won't spoil anything, but I love the stylistic effect that Francesco's using on the last page of every issue
Wait,
is like an
Berman.
old movie frame,
Yeah.
right? And it's cutting out, and the edges are frayed. It's so cool. I love it.
These last ones are my favorite. So wait till you see. The way it ends is like, it's one of my favorite endings I've ever written. So
Nice.
and he's killing it. The second wave is a little bit more kind of going out like this. So, like, there's the Western, which is Canary with Dan Panosian, which has horror elements, but it's a Western. And then and I've never done anything with Dan, who I love and is a friend. Lisa, like I said, is historical fiction, and Dudley Dotson is YA. I mean, it's like, you could read it. It's one of those things that, like, you could give your 12-year-olds, but it also, your 10-year-olds, but it also works.
Sure.
Like Witch Boy and some of the books that I really liked reading with my, like, Class Act and New Kid, and a lot of the stuff I read with my 10-year-old a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then, so those books kind of go like that. They're trying more openly new things for me. And then the last two books, Book of Evil and Duck and Cover, are like big, heavy hitting, coming back to, like Jock and me doing a world. It's a world where everybody, 99% of the population, are born psychopaths starting like tomorrow, and it takes place 25 years after that.
Okay.
That book's, I've been talking about it with Jock for years. And then that one, I'm like, it's no more perfect time to do it than now. And
It would
then,
be surprising if that was the YA book, the
right?
Book of Evil.
And it's written like it's written by the kid, but by a kid who's about to turn the age where you go one way or another. You
Oh, okay.
as a psychopath when you hit adolescence. So it's like a Stand By Me story about these kids that run away to try and find a place where they won't become these people. But it's scary. It's a very dark book. And then Duck and Cover is like me and Raphael doing Americana craziness, where in 1955 there's a nuclear exchange between America and Russia, and everything's pretty obliterated except for kids that hide under their desks, like in those old PSAs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's about these kids that crawl out from their perfectly preserved desks in this like nuclear obliterated world. And they're like, what? The what?
Yeah.
And so it's like almost like manga influence, where it's like tribes of kids, like Lord of the Flies in
Sure.
1950s,
Yeah.
1950s.
Some Akira vibes, with
Yeah,
the kids around the wastelands. Yeah.
yeah, except it's like also they got rockabilly stuff and, like, the old cars and all that. So
Sure.
Buddy Holly style, Elvis style. It's super fun. So that one is like, so it's almost like the first one's kind of spread out, the next one's go, and then the kind of comes back to be like not exactly things that we've done before at all, but things that you're like, oh, this is like coming home. Scott,
Sure.
Jock, Scott, and Rafa. So that's the whole plan.
It sounds fun. It sounds fun. No, I'm excited for it and excited to check it out. And again, I love strategically kind of where you're going. So, all right. So I got to ask you a little bit about Batman. So for readers of a certain generation, like you, like are the Batman storytellers, right? Like you,
Wow.
Greg, Danny, Mickey, the team. You got a Batman movie coming out, right? People are excited about that. If you could see one thing from your time on Batman brought to the big screen, what would you want it to be?
Oh man, huh? That's hard. I mean, I guess the thing that I don't know if it's more abstract. I mean, the thing that I would hope is brought, we wanted to turn Batman from kind of a figure that, historically I grew up in a time when it worked really well to be this way, but he was darker and more gothic and more of tortured, and there was more of a kind of obsession quality to what he did. And it was, and me growing up, like my kids, they have different fears. Like I think their fears are more based on big, scary things like, school shootings and superstorms and like terrorism and like that. They're growing up in a post 9/11 world.
Mhm.
And so it was important for me to make Batman something that was mine, but also theirs. And so I like the idea of Batman not being dark, vengeful, super tortured. I do think that he's pathological. I think there's an interesting pathos there, but the pathos is the pathos of somebody who like is willing to sacrifice everything of their own life and personal to make sure that they're a symbol of inspiration, like for other people. And even though he doesn't think of himself that way, he just thinks of himself as going out there to stop what happened to him happening from to other kids.
Right.
He winds up being a symbol of bravery. Like, so the basic way I used to say it is like, instead of scaring bad people into the shadows, he's about inspiring good people to come out into the light. And he says, if
Mm.
I can fight these bizarre, huge manifestations of your fears, like the Riddler in Zero Year is, terrorism, and the Red Hood gang in that story is random violence, and Joker and Endgame, like they're all kind of my fears, what my kids face.
Yeah.
Then you can come out and face your fears on whatever scale you need to, and as we all need to come together and sort of follow the bat signal out into the night to face this stuff. So it's sort of a shift like that. I really love that. What I really hope is that they'll, if as elements themselves. I mean, Zero Year is probably my favorite thing we did. I love that story. That was the first time I really felt like we were creating our own Batman from the ground up, and it's about all the, it's like that
Oh,
one.
even more than Court of Owls?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think they're all children, so it's really hard. But like
Sure,
Court of
sure.
Owls, I think the issue I have with Court of Owls was just that, like, I didn't have any time. First of all, like I was so terrified the whole time we were doing it, because
Yeah.
like, it was Batman number 1. It was new partner Greg. I'd never worked with Greg. We didn't start getting along till issue 5. Like,
Mm.
even though like that's behind, but that's like by the time you were reading issue 2, we were getting along. So, but it was like because we were making issue 5,
Sure, yeah.
reading issue 1, issue 2. But it was such a stressful experience that it's hard for me to have that be like my favorite, because it was just like, but I deeply love that story. That's my second, I'd say. And then
Mhm,
Last Night on Earth, and then Endgame, and yeah, and Death of the Family and Endgame were like one story to me, so that I call it Endgame. But
mhm.
yeah, like that. I don't know. I mean, I love them all, but it's that if I had one element, I hope they do take, if a physical element, I hope it's the Court of Owls, like that they take, because they're, as a creation, like they're they're the creation, the villain creation, that and Batman Who Laughs, that I'm like proudest of, because I love James Jr. too, but and Bloom, but they to me, they, to be able to add something that's humbling to Batman was a big honor. Like the goal with Court of Owls. The other thing I'll say is like the only reason I don't pick it as my favorite is because it's so deeply about the fears of writing Batman at that time. Like, and as I got more comfortable, I wrote about things that were maybe more expansive.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Court of Owls is about like thinking you're ready for something and that you're prepared and that you're confident, and then not understanding the sort of how small you are in the face of the thing you're facing.
Mm,
So him being humbled by the idea that Gotham is way bigger than he ever thought. Me coming into Batman being like, oh my God, this history. I was writing Dick Grayson under Grant in a way that's like in a pocket. Now I'm writing Batman #1 with Bruce Wayne. Like
hmm
the legacy and history of that. Like, oh, I was confident, feeling good at the end of Black Mirror. Now I'm like, oh my God.
hmm
And it coincided with a time in my life where I was like, we had moved out of the city and we're living out where we live now pretty much. And I would go back to visit my parents, and everything around their apartment was changing. And it was just very strange to go to the areas that I grew up in as a kid and have them completely gone, and have the city make you feel like it was alien to you. And that all of that came together really well in Court of Owls for me. It was like that perfect kind of moment where it just perfect storm of stuff. So I love them. I love them, and yes, I mean I go back and forth. Like some days I do think it's my favorite, but then some days I have to say Zero Year because I'm proudest. I'm really proud of what we were able to do there as something that was ours and different and intensely personal.
Yeah. Yeah. Great Riddler story too, if people want to read it for those purposes as well. All right, final question. Do you have an ongoing bet with James Tynion over who can write the most books at a single time?
Oh my God. James and I, we talk. We used to have like a every other day call, and now we have
Mhm.
like a twice a week call,
Yeah.
just as friends. I mean, he and Greg are like, they're my best friends, and I talk to them all the time. And I'm really good friends with a lot of people I'm working with now, like Tony and Francis and Francesco, and Jock, obviously, and Rafa. But James is like my little brother. He was my student when he was an undergrad, and I was like an adjunct teacher, and I was like in my early 20s, so I've known him almost, I've known him 15 years at this point plus. And so to see him just be the king of comics right now in terms of putting out amazing content, trying new things, and I'm so proud of him. But both of us, like, we literally call each other to be like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" 'Cause I think I'd be fine if it wasn't for the show running thing that really slammed me, because it's working on LA time from 9 a.m. their time till like 3 o'clock their time. So I'm on a Zoom from noon till 6, like every
Yeah.
day, pretty much,
Yeah.
on top of the comic work, which was enough. So I'm like, it all ends for me next month, like in terms of we finish the room, and I'm ahead on my comic stuff. And if I can survive through the end of March, then I get a break and everything kind of goes back to normal. James is similar, where he's in the bottleneck of stuff right now, so we commiserate constantly. But I
Yeah.
love James. I cannot say enough good things about his work, his Substack, him as a human being. Like, he some creators like that are, he's family. Like, I'd choose our friendship over our creative partnership any day. Like, same with Greg, same with Jock, same with Rafa. Those guys too.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
they're family.
Awesome, awesome. All right, good. So light at the end of the tunnel. We'll be looking for all these updates and the witches progress and all that fun stuff here in the coming months. For everybody listening, I'm gonna have links in the show notes to the work that we talked about today. Scott, is there a final place where do you want people to go to check out everything we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm on Twitter. I mean, I'm still on my. I have an assistant now who's an awesome guy, Tyler, who people are starting to get to know, who basically runs Twitter for me. But I really, if you really wanna see in depth stuff what we're doing, go over to Best Jacket on Substack. It's Best Jacket with two T's, and sign up for our free newsletter, and you'll get that. And if you want to sign up for $7 a month, you get our class. I teach a once a month comic writing class called Comic Writing 101 that I have a blast in.
Yeah.
You get one of your comics signed by me, and then there are all kinds of. You can do a founder. You can't do it anymore. We've filled it up, but there's so you can do a paid one or a free one. But the free one, you'll find out everything coming, and it lets me talk a little more than the Twitter and IG and Facebook. So I'd say
Right.
there.
Cool, cool. All right, good deal. Scott, this is a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time this morning to chat. And again, we'll include links here in the show notes for people to check out the work. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at comicbookherald on pretty much anywhere on social. And of course, like and subscribe and share with the podcast and the conversation here for more creator interviews like these. So thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, man. It was a pleasure.